Thousands of people have died in the storm here recently. Thousands, not hundreds. I called a friend up in Pennsylvania and I said, "Jack, how many people died in the storm down here?" It happened just 1 minute ago. News so unbelievable that it's sending shockwaves through the entire mountain men community. Eustace Conway, the guy who built his whole life around living on his own and being close to nature, is back in the news again. But this time, it's not about his skills in the wild. Officials checking his Turtle Island preserve found something inside his old barn that has everyone from fans to federal agents asking the same question. What did Eustace hide all these years? Witnesses say it looked like a scene from a mystery book. Hidden rooms, sealed boxes, and something that made the authorities call for more help right away. Stay tuned because what's inside that barn could change everything we thought we knew about the famous mountain man. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications because this story is only just beginning. For decades, Eustace Conway's barn stood quietly on the edge of Turtle Island Preserve, looking like nothing more than a simple building made from hand-cut logs and old weathered wood. To anyone walking by, it was just another part of his self-sufficient paradise, a place where the mountain man kept tools, grain, and memories of a life lived away from modern stuff. But people who were close to Conway always felt there was something more to it. The barn wasn't just for storage. It was special ground, a space Eustace protected like a fortress. Locals often joked that he treated it more like a museum than a workshop, telling visitors never to go inside unless he personally said it was okay. That secrecy made what happened next feel even more creepy. According to early reports, the discovery started with a simple safety check. To recent storms damaged parts of Turtle Island, county officials came to make sure the old buildings were still safe. When they got to the barn, they found it locked with heavy iron latches, way more than what's normal for animals or tools. After trying many times to reach Eustace, the team went in with local authorities watching. Once inside, everything felt different right away. The smell of old pine and oil hung in the air. But there was something else. Something metallic, a little chemical, and strangely clean. Stacked along the walls were neatly labeled crates, each covered in dust and sealed with old wax. But it wasn't until one of the inspectors accidentally kicked a loose floorboard that the real secret showed itself. Under the planks was a narrow wooden hatch, almost impossible to see from above. When they pried it open, it led to a staircase going down into the dark. The investigators stopped for a second, shining their flashlights into the hole. What they saw gave them chills. Rows of shelves lined with glass jars, rusted tools, and books wrapped in animal hide. Someone had been working down there, writing things down carefully and keeping it all hidden on purpose. The team called local police right away. When asked later, one of the first responders said, "It didn't feel like we were in a barn anymore. It felt like stepping into someone's secret world." Authorities quickly blocked off the area, telling everyone to stay back while they looked at what was there. That's when Eustace showed up. Witnesses say he didn't look shocked or scared, just disappointed. He reportedly muttered under his breath, "They weren't supposed to find this yet. For now, officials won't say what was found under the barn. But people on the inside say it's unlike anything they've ever seen connected to Eustace Conway." And for a man who's spent his life keeping things simple, this new mystery suggests something way more complicated and maybe even dangerous. When investigators went down into the darkness under Eustace Conway's barn, they thought they'd find old farm tools or maybe some forgotten old things. Instead, what they found looked more like a private library, an underground room carefully set up and kept safe. The air was thick with dust and a faint smell of formaldehyde. Rows of shelves filled the small room, each holding dozens of glass jars. Inside the jars were things no one could explain easily. Preserved animal organs, feathers, bones, and even strange plant samples that seemed to glow a little under flashlight light. Next to them were handmade journals sealed in wax, each labeled with strange phrases like cycle study, reversion data, and Project Living Legacy. Investigators said it looked less like the work of a woodsman and more like that of a scientist in the field, someone obsessed with recording every piece of the natural world. On an old wooden table sat several tools: scalpels, magnifying glasses, syringes, and what looked like homemade microscopes made from salvaged glass. Some of the metal tools were decades old. Others looked newly made. Whoever worked here had been there recently. Even stranger were the crates lined against the back wall. Some had faded U.S. Forestry Service markings. Others had serial numbers starting with Fed and Bio, suggesting they once belonged to a government project. One crate, when opened, had reels of film, each labeled with handwritten notes in Eustace's own writing. One said, "Cycle 19, Observations of Conscious Adaptation." Authorities wouldn't say what was on the tapes, but an anonymous insider claimed that what they saw shouldn't exist. The journals, according to early looks, had sketches of human body parts mixed with diagrams of animal nervous systems, suggesting a study into how people and animals are similar. There were pages about experiments in endurance, notes on how the body handles starvation, being alone, and cold. Some entries were signed EC, dated as recently as 2019. Others had no signature at all, as if someone else wrote them. To make things more creepy, one corner of the room had an old chest full of bones, some from animals, but a few that looked clearly human. Whether they were old finds or something more recent is still being checked. When asked, Eustace stayed quiet. Witnesses at the scene say he stood at the top of the stairs, watching the investigators with a calm but strong look, muttering only one sentence before walking away. "They're not ready to see what I've seen." That line alone has started endless guesses. What did he mean by they? Who was he talking about? And most importantly, what kind of discovery could make a man like Eustace Conway, known for being honest and real, risk everything to keep it secret? Whatever the truth is, one thing is clear. The barn wasn't a storage place at all. It was a vault, and what it held inside might be the most shocking thing in Eustace's life. By the next morning, Turtle Island Preserve looked less like a peaceful home and more like a locked-down crime scene. Yellow tape was around the barn, police cars lined the dirt road, and reporters gathered at the edge of the property, hungry for answers. For the first time in years, Eustace Conway's safe place, his life's work, was full of people who didn't get his world. Inside the barn, investigators carefully listed everything found underground. Each item was recorded and sealed as evidence. The mood was tense. Local officers whispered that the whole thing felt like a government operation, not a small-town check. What confused them most wasn't just what they found. It was why it was there. What was Eustace, a man who gave his life to simple and natural living, doing with things that looked like pieces of secret research? When Eustace finally spoke, the crowd went quiet. Calm and steady, he didn't deny that the materials were his. Everything in that barn, he said, was put there on purpose. The earth hides truths we refuse to see. I only preserved them. That statement brought up more questions than answers. What truths was he talking about? Some reporters asked about the crates with government codes, but Eustace wouldn't explain more. Those markings, he said, don't belong to me. They belong to history. Then, without another word, he walked away, leaving investigators surprised. In the hours after, several agencies reportedly joined the case, including ones for environment and historical preservation. According to leaks, early findings showed that some of the items were older than when Eustace owned the property, maybe going back decades. Could he have found something while growing his preserve and decided to hide it, instead of telling anyone? His followers say he was just protecting discoveries the modern world would use badly or ruin. But doubters say his actions showed too much secrecy, almost like paranoia. Friends said he had been super focused lately, often staying in the barn late into the night. By midday, rumors spread fast online. Talk of biological experiments, ancient bones, and even secret relics buried under Turtle Island. None of it was proven, but one clear fact stayed. The evidence taken from Eustace Conway's barn was now with federal people. His peaceful image as the wise hermit of the Appalachian Mountains was broken. The man once loved for living in balance with nature now stood in the middle of a mystery that could change his whole story. Yet through everything, Eustace showed no fear, only quiet belief. To him, this was never a discovery. It was a revelation that was overdue. To understand the shocking find under Eustace Conway's barn, investigators looked at his past, hoping to figure out what could push a man who loved simplicity to hide what looked like a secret lab. Born in 1961 in South Carolina, Eustace grew up in a strict school-focused home where learning mattered most. His mom was a teacher, and his dad, a tough thinker, pushed him to question normal ways. From a young age, Eustace showed a strange interest in biology and what makes humans human. While other kids played, he cut open small animals to learn how life worked. That curiosity went with him to Appalachian State University, where he studied environmental stuff and anthropology. Professors remembered him as smart, but different. A student who questioned not just human progress, but the moral price of it. He once wrote in a paper that civilization is the experiment and nature is the control. It was a scary statement that hinted at a lifelong interest in testing human limits. After finishing school, he went on extreme wilderness trips, living in caves and forests, testing how long he could last against weather and hardship. Friends said he kept detailed journals about how the human body and mind change under stress. Notes that sounded a lot like the ones found in the barn. One of his early friends once remembered Eustace spending a whole winter alone in the Blue Ridge Mountains with just a knife, saying it was for research. When the investigation team found journals in the barn labeled cycle study and reversion data, it was clear his experiments didn't stop years ago. They had changed. The drawings in his hand compared modern body parts with old survival ways, suggesting he was studying how to bring humanity back to a more basic state. Some even think he was just watching nature. He was trying to become part of it. To many, Eustace was a deep thinker of the wild, but to others, these finds show him as something much more complicated. A man who may have mixed science and survival. And if his past tells us anything, what investigators found next would push that mix way past normal understanding. When investigators went back to Eustace Conway's barn for another look, they didn't think they'd find anything more than the preserved samples and journals. But deep behind piles of old wood and weathered boards, one officer noticed a wall panel that didn't match the others. The wood lines went the opposite way, and when tapped lightly, it sounded empty inside. They pried it open, and what they found made the whole room go quiet. Hidden behind the panel was a sealed, small room no bigger than a closet. Inside, lying on a wooden table under a canvas sheet, was a skeleton. At first look, it seemed human, but as experts checked, it wasn't. The sizes were wrong. The arms were longer, the fingers too thin, and the jaw narrower than any known human. Even the bone thickness, when scanned, didn't match normal bodies. The skeleton had been treated with some unknown preserving stuff, one that stopped rot but left the bones with a faint metal shine. Some officers thought it was a fake. Others weren't sure. Next to the remains was an open journal in Eustace's clear handwriting. The entry said, "Found at creek bed near the ridge. Movement before stillness. Structure beyond human pattern." The date was October 2020, less than 5 years ago. The meaning was huge. Was Eustace recording a find or admitting to something he made himself? A few investigators whispered that the skeleton looked like some of his body sketches labeled adaptive reversion model. If true, it meant Eustace had been experimenting with or keeping something that science couldn't name. When asked again, he gave no straight answers. He reportedly told one officer, "It's not what you think. It's not death. It's transition. Authorities took the remains right away and moved them to a safe place for study, but no one has shared details since. The FBI getting involved suddenly only made rumors grow that what was under Eustace's barn wasn't from this time or this kind of creature. For now, the official word is still waiting for proof. But those who saw the skeleton said the same thing. It wasn't human, and it wasn't old. It was something in the middle. News of the skeleton spread faster than officials could stop it. And in days, the story was out in public. Social media filled with guesses. Amateur researchers looked at every leaked photo, and conspiracy pages said the find proved Eustace Conway had found proof of something from another world or something history hid on purpose. But in the mess, one thing stood out. People picked sides. Supporters of Eustace came to his defense, calling him a visionary who was misunderstood. They said the remains were either a teaching tool or part of an old study of people that Eustace kept out of respect for science. Many pointed to his lifelong work in teaching and saving things as proof he would never make something up for attention. But doubters and investigators weren't sure. To them, too many things didn't fit. The strange coded journals, the government markings, and the fact that the bones were never reported or listed. Some even suggested Eustace found proof of an unknown species, or maybe something officials hid long ago. Through it all, Eustace stayed quiet, saying no to interviews and staying out of sight. When he finally answered, it wasn't on TV or to reporters. It was through a handwritten note nailed to the barn door. It read, "Nature is older than truth. What we fear, we bury. What we bury, the earth remembers." Those words only made the mystery bigger, starting a crazy rush among people trying to figure out to what he meant. Was he saying he found something ancient or warning everyone about what hides under our own history?